An appealing sign can boost business. One Seattle company has helped others build their brands for decades.
And they get a life sometimes of their own, and sometimes they become landmarks.
You're gonna have to come back even farther.
If neon art is your thing, a popular new workshop will teach you this specialized skill.
All it does is do something very simple. It changes the room.
All right.
These signs, worn down by time, point to places long since gone. But each one has a story. That's next on CityStream. Hello, I'm Enrique Cerna, and welcome to a special CityStream highlighting some of our region's cherished signs like Dick's Drive-In that tap into the special connection that we share with companies. Whether it's an old favorite or an upstart looking to make a name, the sign above the front door tells the world who you are and why you matter. Successful companies know a good sign will drive business. It reinforces the brand, helps a company stand out, and it spreads the message 24/7. Seattle's National Sign Corporation has helped businesses get noticed for more than a century. And in some cases, like here at the market, the sign itself becomes an icon. Producer Randy Ng has a look.
A business without a sign is a sign of no business.
Most people take signs for granted.
We've been a business here in Seattle for over 100 years. We've done so many, you just sometimes forget about them. You start thinking about it, then you can name about 5 more. My grandfather, George Zamberlin, came to America in 1904. Obviously, he needed to get a job and work, and so he started just knocking on doors and asking people if he could do signs and hand painting on their building. In 1915, he incorporated as a company, and that company was Acme Sign Company. And then in 1930, when neon was just coming in, he got right on that and changed his name actually from Acme Sign to Neon Acme Sign Corporation. My father, Anthony Zamberlin, and my uncle, George Zamberlin, joined him in the 50s. And then in 1960, they decided to split. They bought a company called National Neon. And then in 1970, my grandfather passed away. They combined Neon Acme into National Neon. That's how we got to be National Sign Corporation today. He was definitely a promoter and painter, and and grew this business into something that lasted 100 years. You can see he did a lot of work in the public market. That was an immigrant community up there that was selling the vegetables and the fish. He did a lot of work in the international community, both Japantown and Chinatown.
All these restaurants had neon signs, and when they're out there, they really were the best advertisement.
They probably trusted him because he was an immigrant himself, and a lot of times they didn't work in the more established channels of business. I'm sure he did trades back and forth with them because I don't think he had a lot of money. I don't think they might have had a lot.
That's how everyone survived in the old days. Everybody helped each other out.
Also, when you're working in like the Chinese or the Japanese community, once you get known, all the businesses use you. So I'm sure people along the neighborhood and stuff, go have George Zamberlin do the signs. He did our sign. So I think that's where he created a lot of his business relationships. Sometimes we see people when they start really small, and then 20 years later, they're a huge corporation. It gives small businesses an equal footing with large corporations. We've worked with Dick's Drive-In and we kind of created that whole thing. They were just guys that were starting a restaurant. You know, they came in here, our designers designed it, and now it's a classic.
This sign has been sort of a beacon for everyone's favorite burger restaurant here in Seattle, part of iconic Seattle. It's part of what people associate with their love of our restaurants.
We call this room the Boneyard, or we call it the Ghost Room. I call it the National Sign Museum. We have a lot of interesting older signs here that we've taken down from businesses, and they're so classic that we've kept them. A lot of history for sure. There's a lot of good created artwork here, and it'll show you maybe a lot of good ideas as far as making new signs. So this is one of our old airport packages for SeaTac. This is a big one. This took us over a year. We did the baggage area, the parking garages. We did the main terminal satellites. Even simple, there's a lot of detail. And that's kind of the trick is, you know, they look like almost anybody could make them. Still there, even though we haven't used it for 15 to 20 years. What our pattern people would do is they would put paper up here, the size of the sign, and then they would get a big projector and go back about 50 feet and project the graphic on the wall.
We expanded this big sign and traced everything by hand.
People would put a big roof sign across their building. It might be well over 100 feet. We did the Port of Seattle sign down on the waterfront that used to have, I think, 12-foot letters. And that thing must have been a couple 100 feet across. Computers weren't really around in the way we use them today until like the mid-90s.
New technology came in, and also now we don't have to go through all that anymore.
We've learned a lot over 100 years.
There's a lot of thought and strategy that goes into the design. Creating an image, we're looking at incorporating their brand or making it either grandiose or minimal depending on the location.
You know, is it communicating what you want to the community? Because you're part of that community and they get a life sometimes of their own. And sometimes they become landmarks, and if you take them down, people get really upset.
We have a lot of customers, you know, see, they want to see the sign, the old sign. So that way the sign can bring back the history and the memory of the good time that they have here.
You know, that T-ball win, they get a burger, first time driving their car, they drive to Dick's to get a milkshake, and people associate those memories with tastes and smells and visuals as well. So when they see that sign, it takes them back to a happy memory.
When I'm home with my kids, hey, there's a sign, and they just like, oh, all right, there's another sign. But they don't see it the way we do, you know, because I really take pride in what we had accomplished and what we built, and that makes me feel good. You know, 'cause especially when I see it up there, it's like, wow. That's the sign. 25,
30 years later, you drive by and that sign's still there, lit, and we like to tell people that, you know, we did this business's sign.
National Sign has been in business so long, it created this sign above Seattle's oldest bar, the Venerable Merchants Cafe. Now, some of you may have said, oh yeah, I remember many of those old businesses. Well, if you'd like to revisit them, plus many more, we've created a web gallery for you to enjoy. Just go to facebook.com/Seattle Channel. Next on CityStream, a new workshop teaches young artists the specialized craft of neon art.
Nice. Yeah, not bad.
The original Rainier Bear R is one of the region's iconic signs. Installed in the 1950s, it stood as a beacon high above I-5 for decades. Now restored, the glowing red R is a popular attraction here at the Museum of History and Industry. But in 2013, a replica R returned to the top of the old Rainier Brewery, thanks to custom sign maker Western Neon. The company has been illuminating the Northwest for more than 30 years. Some of its handiwork includes Cupcake Royale, Mighty O Donuts, and the W Hotel. Its work is also inspiring a new wave of artists. In 2018, the company opened the Western Neon School of Art. So if fire, glass, electrification, and gases like neon, argon, and krypton are your thing, you're in the right place.
When you are around something that we call neon, it doesn't feel like anything else. You only ever see people smile.
Nice. Yeah, not bad.
When they're around the medium. It's the electricity, I think it's tactile, it's the feeling that you can actually touch light because you're seeing it through glass.
I love it.
Jay and Michael Blazek started Western Neon as Seattle's first illuminated art gallery in 1985. It was really built on the DNA of their father, Dean, who started a neon school in Wisconsin in the late 80s. The owner of the business now is Andre Lucero, and we got together after working 20 years on public art projects and other different areas of interest in the summer of 17 with Kelsey Fernkoff, started the Western Neon School of Art as a way to give back to the community and to continue to explore the medium. We're really fortunate to have the business as the backbone and supporter of the school because we've had so much rich history in Seattle in creating iconic pieces in the landscape. We started in January of 2018 with our first introductory class, Introduction to Light, Space, and Interactive Technologies with 8 students. From there, it's grown to having quarterly classes, so we do fall, winter, and spring. And we have 2 introduction classes and now offer an intermediate class.
You heat up only this much glass?
I'd heat right there.
Oh, just right there?
Yeah.
Oh,
maybe a little
crazy.
more, you know.
So you heat this way. See, I was thinking something different. Okay, cool.
Yeah. You're gonna have to come back even farther because that inside's staying a little cool. You know what I mean?
And at this point in time, we have almost 450 people on our waiting list. And when we post our classes, it can be 8 hours or less that all those classes for almost all the quarters are gone. These tubes, although it is a very difficult process to bend one and make one and put the electrodes on and make the pump and the gas stays in there, don't treat it as precious. So the beginner's class is really focused on history of the medium and then understanding just what it is. The chalk's on there because it makes it slide over the glass really well. You want that on the inside. Learning basic bends like doing a double back, doing a 90 degree. The basic techniques it takes to construct something.
So this is a blow hose. This part goes in your mouth, and this part goes at the other end of the tube. And you blow into it when the glass gets hot enough that it's starting to close in on itself. That way we blow into the tube and it keeps the diameter of the glass thick enough and keeps the integrity of the glass the same.
Ideally, you would kind of point this one straight up in the air. And as you're doing it, bring them both up like that so that you would be pointing it down.
Here's how it works. There are 5 elements that illuminate that we work with in what we call neon, which is kind of a misnomer because there are 5 elements. There's helium, neon, argon, krypton, and xenon. The most common ones we work with are neon and argon. And when we work with argon, we mix it with mercury, which gives it a very beautiful, bright white blue color.
When you make a mercury tube, you seal it off like this, you burn it in for a little while and make sure the color is looking good and that it doesn't have air in it, and then you drop the mercury in. So I'm gonna drop that in. Yeah. And that's the difference between like no mercury and mercury in an argon tube.
We just have them work with the neon and with the argon in a clear glass, just to keep it really simple, efficient, and minimal. Then for our intermediate class, they had the ability to add mercury to the argon to give a different flavor. It also allows them to work in colored glass, and that's the big step up in that class. Then we really encourage them to focus on a focused project.
It'll be filled with sand eventually, and then they'll be secure.
In the beginning class, I did the house letters for my house, and I wasn't happy with my tube, so I redid the tube.
When you're in a space and you turn on something that's clear glass with this space gas inside of it that electrifies, all it does is do something very simple. It changes the room. All right. Instantaneously, it gives you a feeling. And nothing else can do that. It's beautiful.
That's awesome.
It's an art form that just should never be forgotten. It is beautiful. It's perfect.
If you'd like to sign up, this is the website you need to check out, wnsaseattle.org/programs. They'll be publishing their upcoming calendar for fall, also for classes in the winter and spring of 2020. The workshops fill up fast, but they recommend you join the waiting list at the bottom of the page. They point to places that are now just memories, in search of ghost signs, as CityStream continues. These days, everyone has GPS at their fingertips, but we still need street signs to find our way. For more than 100 years, the city, state, and feds have posted signs around town. Some are dingy and hidden from view, but as Felix Benel discovered, vintage signs can still be found if you know where to look.
There are signs everywhere that Seattle is haunted by ghosts.
Yeah, they're out there.
Robin Ford has seen the signs firsthand.
There's just pockets where time forgets it, you know?
And he knows where these silent ghosts lurk, waiting to be hunted down.
My best guess. In the quieter areas, that's where you find them.
The ghosts that Robin Ford knows are a sign. Ghost signs, reflections from the past that refuse to move on. Here at the Seattle Department of Transportation, his job is to bring new signs to life.
Manufacturing, primarily. We have a couple different methods to manufacture traffic signs. We maintain an inventory of signs for our sign installers to daily go out and do their activities. We also provide inventories of custom signs for larger projects, upscale projects in the downtown corridor and throughout the city.
And it's also the place where a select few signs come to, well, if not die exactly, to live on in a museum of sorts. And Robin Ford is our spirit guide as we hunt the streets of Seattle for ghost signs. There's no formal definition for a ghost sign. Generally, these are signs that date back into history and that may no longer be needed, or that are somehow out of date but yet still remain on display out on the streets.
I think it's sensory overload. There's a lot of unique signs out there.
If you spend much time behind the wheel in Seattle traffic, you can't help but start to notice these messages from the past as you glance around waiting for the cars ahead of you to move. And some of these ghost signs have interesting stories to tell. At the bottom of Columbia Street, an original US Highway 99 shield logo stands out from all the other more modern 99 signs, the ones with a George Washington silhouette.
How about access? Well, US Highway 99, proceeding southwest from Aurora Avenue, ducks into the well-ventilated Battery Street Tunnel and emerges on the Alaskan Way Viaduct.
The Columbia on-ramp to the viaduct and the sign weren't built until 1966. That's more than 10 years after the viaduct first opened to traffic, with no on-ramps and no off-ramps. A few blocks west at the 1966 Coleman Dock Ferry Terminal, a ghost sign directs cars exiting the Bremerton and Bainbridge boats to Temp or Temporary I-90. Tourists be warned, Temporary I-90 went away 25 years ago. And it was more than 50 years ago when the federal government launched a program to put survival supplies in the basements of urban buildings. Distinctive fallout shelter signs, somehow simultaneously creepy and reassuring, were once ubiquitous on downtown streets. This one on Western Avenue might be the only one left in Seattle.
Farther east, the old ice arena is also due for modernization, and the parking lot on the corner of 5th and Mercer becomes part of the Gateway 21 amusement strip.
Of course, the early 1960s weren't only about nuclear destruction. In addition to building the World's Fairgrounds at Seattle Center, civic leaders launched a program to mark scenic drives around the city. A map was published, and hundreds of Trident and Trees signs directed local and out-of-town drivers along 4 different routes. 5+ decades later, one of the few remaining scenic drive signs is easy to miss. It's on the viaduct in the northbound lanes just south of the Battery Street Tunnel.
We have 188,000 signs, and give or take a couple thousand, because things happen out in the field. You know, people don't record the signs when they're installed, they get stolen, that type of thing.
Not long ago, there was another scenic drive sign just south of the Fauntleroy ferry terminal. All that's left there now is the post and the mounting hardware. Let's hope this missing ghost found a good home. From a pedestrian underpass beneath the Magnolia Bridge, sailors and soldiers disembarking from transport ships at Pier 91 back in the 1950s and 60s were once directed to buses for a ride to Fort Lawton or downtown. The soldiers and sailors were discharged decades ago, but the sign remains on active duty. It takes a lot of effort to see all these ghosts, and as we learned at Fauntleroy, there's no guarantee they'll still be there when you make the trip. What does Robin Ford think about some way to formally preserve these ghost signs? Maybe a sign landmark program?
I think it would be great, because right now that sign, somebody could steal it, but a lot of times the installers, unless directed in a certain way, that sign will go into recycling.
Until that happens, when you hear the ghost signs calling, you'd better just get in the car.
There are no organized tours of ghost signs in Seattle, and there's no guarantee that signs like this one are going to be around much longer. This is going to go away as soon as the viaduct goes down. So get out there and find them and enjoy them today. And that wraps up this special episode of CityStream, highlighting some of our region's most memorable signs. If you'd like to know more about our programming, just go to theseattlechannel.org. I'm Enrique Cerna. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.